Hey guys, this is going to be my review of the finale of The Outsider. So this is the final episode, episode 10, and it is called Must Can't. Must/can't. So yeah, the last episode of this mini-series based on the Stephen King novel. And sort of not a great deal to talk about, which isn't really a knock on the episode. It's a two-header really, because the first half of the episode picks up with like the shooting and the standoff from last week, which was the cliffhanger with Jack still possessed by Al Coco shooting at the group, and we saw as it cut to credits last week, then Alec had been killed. He'd been shot and sacrificed, and then you hear a couple more shots and it cut to light black. So that was the dramatic ending of last week's episode. So the first half of the finale deals with that, and obviously with the group trying to get to El Coco in time. And then the second half, the kind of last 20 minutes, whatever you want to say, sort of deals with the fallout and the whole sort of what happens afterwards, which I'll get to. So full spoilers basically. It's one of those finales that I think where, depending on your overall views of the show, then it's really going to depend on how you feel about the finale. If you haven't really been on board with this show, then I don't think the finale is going to do too much for you. I mean, it's effectively done, so I don't think there's going to be much that's going to be like bad for you. It's just it's quite consistent with the rest of the show. So if you've not really liked the series up to now, then I don't think the finale is going to do much to change your mind. On the other hand, if you have been on board and generally enjoyed the show, which I have, then I think it's going to be a pleasing kind of conclusion to the story. I think there's one or two maybe minor issues or question marks, but I thought it was a strong finale. And so I'll start off with obviously the standoff, the shooting. So as I said, Alec has been sacrificed and several other shots. And what we do is we cut back and forth between Jack shooting at them. He's just lost his mind. He's gone absolutely crazy. He's shouting stuff about like Mother Nature and stuff like that, and he's making like these crazed like wild noises. At the same time, we cut to like the cave, inside the cave with Al Coco, or the doppelganger version of Claude, if you like, and he's just getting desperate because he hasn't fed for a while, and he's just reacting to what's happening with Jack and the group. So we see things spiral out of control for Al Coco as well, and how he, or it I guess is the right term, is really getting frantic and desperate and considering another move if Jack doesn't finish them all off. So again, this is a really nice bit of direction in this scene, because maybe for the faults with the storytelling at times, I don't think there can be much fault with the direction generally. I mean, it's not necessarily the most amazing direction you'll see, but I do think there has been an atmosphere. I do think there has been a sort of some interesting visual touches, and I think as a horror show it's worked pretty damn well. But I do like the kind of mixture of shots in this scene. I like how we get the close up of people like Jack and people like Holly, and just seeing the sweat coming from their brows really. And we do get like this real back and forth tension. So Howie arrives as well. He's obviously gone along with Claude's brother. So the truth has come out in the previous episode. So Claude, his brother Howie, all arrive at this standoff. And as I said, there's this back and forth stuff going on where Holly tries to cause a distraction, and at one point Andy sort of gets involved, and they're sort of hunched behind this truck at some point where they've sort of caused a distraction, and they've managed to get that far. And the next one shot is actually Claude's brother. He's like just puts himself out there and he gets killed. It's almost like his last sort of heroic act. His one heroic act in a way that we've seen anyway. But putting it on his line for his brother. So that's another kind of sacrifice, which maybe doesn't mean a great deal, but whatever. I mean, it means something to Claude. But Holly and Ralph, as the two lead characters, they decide to stay and face this thing, and they tried to cause a distraction. Yaz is also shot. He's shot in the arm, but he's just injured. He's not actually killed at this point, but he's obviously put in danger. And so Andy appears to have escaped. He seems to be escaping with Howie, and obviously this is to try and get back up, to try and get help. But then Jack shoots into the truck that they're about to escape in. So the petrol drips out of it, and this obviously leaves it open for him then to shoot at it again, and that obviously causes an explosion. So Howard is sacrificed, he's killed, and so is Andy, which I only realised later. I didn't connect that. I assumed Andy had escaped, but he's killed, because it's quite a poignant moment later when Holly's selling that. But So we're sort of left down to the three of them, Yaz, Holly and Ralph. And you get some good stuff with Holly and Ralph even in this scene, because he's trying to protect her, he's trying to stop her from going out there. And Holly, who is, as I've said before, the true outsider of this show, she becomes centre stage. She just has, again, even in this sort of situation where it just seems madness to go out there, I think part of it is just being heroic and kind of sacrificing herself, and part of it is that she has this willpower, this belief that she is going to do something. So she walks out there like she's in the line of fire. Ralph and Yaz are shouting at Holly to get back, to get out of the way. And we get the shot from the barrel of the gun, Jack pointing at him. And Jack is about to shoot, and then Holly shouts out, it's like, I think it's God have mercy on your soul or something, or oh, damn you to hell. So really dramatic words, and it's like getting into the religious stuff. And her thinking there is that she knows that El Coco can hear what she's saying, and so it sort of creates a reaction in her, and it really cuts into Jack. It really freezes him in his tracks, and it's almost just willpower. There's no real reason why he wouldn't shoot her. It's just words at this point, but it's just this big sort of statement, and it totally like freezes Jack. Jack sort of tenses up and isn't sure whether he can shoot her. But this gets the attention of El Coco, and the next thing we know, there's a snake on the rock, like behind Jack, and obviously we're meant to think El Coco is controlling the snake, and yeah, it sort of cuts away, and you see Jack sort of facing it, and he's obviously freaked out, but it again goes to this idea of nature and nature being controlled by this supernatural sort of entity. But I think it goes to the metaphor as well of Jack becoming this very animalistic sort of character. How his rage is like animal instincts have just been exposed, and just the ugly side of that has come out. And on the other hand, Holly has kept in control of those, and has really used her head in this situation, as she has as well. So it's all about keeping cool. So the snake is almost another like side to that metaphor. So yeah, we don't actually see it. They cut away from it, but Jack is like bitten by this, we're assuming, venomous snake. So Al Coco basically saying, Jack, you bottled this, so here's your punishment. And so then Jack like wanders out all sort of wounded, and he appears to be dying. But what happens is it's sort of a sacrifice, but it's just putting himself out of his misery. He shoots himself, but not before he like points the others towards the cave. So that's kind of his last sort of good act in helping them actually know where El Coco is. So then after that, we get this drawn out sequence where Holly and Ralph, they go into the cave. Yaz stays behind, I think partly because he's injured and partly because they figure they need someone on the outside just in case. So they go into the cave, and again, this is all to do with atmosphere and visuals, and it's just to do with them working their way through this cave, and they start seeing like the remains of people who El Coco has sort of fed on. And Claude is also outside. I should just point this out. He's still with his brother who has been killed. So you get this, as I said, long sort of period where they're just working their way through the cave. They also see like the names of the Bolton family from years ago, so almost like a grave inside, if you like. But the fact that now Coco has been checking this list, and we sort of find out then it's one of its frustrations, the fact that it hasn't been able to get to this family, hasn't been able to these are ones that got away almost, but that's why he has this interest in the family. I keep saying it really. But yeah, this is kind of another chance for Paddy Constantine to step forward and shine, because he obviously is representing the dark side of Claude and is being, controlled by El Coco. So we get to see him, and his voice appears, or doesn't appear, but we hear his voice first of all speaking to Holly and Ralph. And yeah, Constantine gets to be the kind of like bad boy, the sort of evil presence in the cave, and he does it very well. It's a bit odd seeing that much of him in a way, and seeing this other side of him where we'd only seen fragments, and obviously Claude's a more grounded character, although quite murky as well. But Yeah, I did sort of like it. I liked the performance from Constantine in these scenes. And we just get more mind games between him and Holly, and the fact that this thing has been waiting for Holly, and he's curious about how Holly figured it all out, and more on that later, by the way. But it's kind of this standoff and these like exchange of words, and he's baiting Jack to shoot it as well, because Holly is asking it about why do you feed on children, and he just gives this like perverse response. Then they just taste the best, and that's when Ralph almost snaps and just shoots it dead. But it's also been revealed that noise, particularly high pitched loud noises, the caves are very vulnerable, so that it can shatter basically with too much noise. So things come to a head when Claude finally comes into the cave. He's got a gun. He obviously wants revenge for his brother. And Holly and Ralph just tried to talk him out of it. They tell him that the cave will cave in basically if he shoots the gun, and they're trying to. They're in this dilemma where they're not sure whether to kill this thing or what works out for the best, because Ralph is still very much in this frame of mind where he's trying to get evidence. He's trying to make it so they can stop this thing, but also get the evidence they need, and the evidence which proves that Terry, going all the way back to the beginning now, exonerates him, even though in some senses Terry is now dead, so it doesn't matter too much. But it's still important. It's symbolic. They want to clear his name, and it's interesting because Holly says at one point, "Who's Terry?" And at the time, I didn't think too much about that. I think it's just this idea that Holly wasn't there at the start of the case and she was called in. I mean, it's a little bit odd. She might not have heard about that case in the news, but whatever. It's just this idea that this was a long time ago and we've had several things since, and she was just called in at a different stage in a way. So, but whatever. There is a particular reason why she asks who's Terry, which comes later. But things come to a head, and Claude just can't take it, and he shoots El Coco. And as they warned him, bits of the section of the cave start crumbling in, tumbling down, and Claude gets injured. He doesn't get killed. El Coco appears to be dead, but he's not quite dead. He's trapped under some rubble. It is down, and this is Ralph's big moment. There's two big moments of the episode for Ralph. There's one later with Janine or Jeannie. But this is the first one because this is kind of his arc. This is kind of his big moment where he's been with this thing throughout. He's obviously had his kind of iffy sort of moments. He's been a non-believer for most of the story. But finally he gets to confront this thing. He finally has the power to do something about it. And he starts talking to it and going through the options about the way this could play out. And one of the options he mentions is that if he lets it live and if he traps it and they then like the authorities goes and like the scientists do experiments on it, his like idea behind that is, well, it's never going to end then. And it's this idea of they just can't resist. They'll be so taken with this phenomena, then they'll just want to use it, and that way the evil is never sort of gone. So Ralph just kills it. That's his thing, and it's an effective visual moment because we get these different like faces appearing on Al Coco, which obviously people it's morphed into. And Ralph finally just smashes its head in with a rock. It's pinned down, smash, and that's obviously enough to kill it. So El Coco is dead. But this brings up the question at this point of, well, how are they going to clear Terry's name? How is disposing of this thing really enough to clear his name? But what's their strategy? How are they going to cover this? Because they've all agreed then the local authorities and the FBI in general just aren't going to accept this story, this doppelganger story. So we get some involvement from Yaz. There is a good sort of moment where Holly sells the death of Andy. She's really sad because she just says he was only here to be with me. So it's kind of that sacrifice. Andy's a nice enough guy. I think because we like Holly, we're sort of invested in him, and her response to him dying, and just the sadness of it, the fact that he was this innocent from the outside. Because I think obviously if someone like Holly dies, of course it's tragic, but I think in her line of work she knows the risks, whereas Andy came as a loyal sort of partner to her and was kind of totally, it would certainly in real terms it would be a lot more tragic, but whatever, it's a good moment the way they sell Andy. And I think obviously you could say it's quite predictable that Ralph and Holly survive, but it's a payoff. They've been the main characters, and their relationship gets to this nice point at the end of this whole thing. So I'm totally cool with that, and it's important we do have sacrifices, and I kind of like that we did, and the way Holly sells that moment. So then what happened is they have to come up with a story to cover their tracks, and they make sure everyone is in sync. And they hide some of the like they hide Andy's body, they hide Claude's brother's body. I didn't quite figure out why they were doing that, to be honest, but but what happens is that their story is that they're going to pin it all on Jack, but then he's an accomplished. So they're kind of mixing facts with fiction. It's largely true, but they're leaving out the supernatural part. And they called the district attorney, who originally closed the case because he felt the evidence was overwhelming, that it tied Terry to the original killings or killing. So yeah, that's sort of what they do. They get everyone to be in sync. What the fuck? Sorry, something just flashed up. What the hell? They get Claude to come up to back up their story, and his like alibi, and not exactly alibi, but his part of the story is that he got a phone call from Jack, and Jack suckered him to the location and then shot at him. And so that's because maybe this is a little weak, but they're playing on the fact that Jack and Claude have history from the club and what have you. So then Jack would have like an aggression towards him. But they're trying to work the angle then whoever's involved in this thing like recruited Jack to help him out and played on the fact that there's tension between Jack and Claude. So they all give the same story essentially, and the one thing they're leaving out is the supernatural element. They're not saying anything about El Coco or doppelgangers, or basically because they won't be believed, but also because they want to pin it on someone, like a living person. Well, not living because he's dead now, Jack, but they want to pin it on like a human. And they go to the extent where Jeannie visits Glory and she says, well, they're going to reopen this case, but when they question you don't say anything about when Holly mentioned El Coco. Even if you mention that meeting, don't mention anything supernatural. And Glory seems quite satisfied with this. She trusts Jeannie and she says that won't be a problem. And she's obviously like satisfied that they're going to clear Terry's name. And I like the touch as well with Jeannie like burning the chair from the house. That is, of course, the chair which has like the substance from El Coco on. So in the event then their house is like searched, which it probably will be, with the case being reopened. But anyway, they're not taking any chance, so she burns the chair. So I did like that little moment as well. And yeah, they reopen the case because the district attorney visits Glory, says they're reopening the case because of new evidence, because they found different like substances, different samples at the scene of the shootout, and the fact that these children are dead, and obviously there's been other people involved, so it's enough to kind of put doubt and clear Terry's name. So he says, yeah, we're clearing Terry's name. And what I like about this scene, it's just a small little scene, it just ties things up, because also the district attorney mentions the legal action from Jeannie, Glory, which is part of like the motivation as well. So it kind of ties everything up quite neatly. But what I like about the scene is that Glory just plays it cool. She keeps her head and says, that's fine. And she doesn't mention any supernatural involvement, which she was asked not to. And she's just pleased. She has a nice moment of like resolution with her child, because her daughter just asked, did that man say something to upset you? And she says, no, he didn't say anything bad. And they just hug. It's a nice little moment. She's just relieved to clear her husband's name. So I quite like how how Glory plays it cool in that scene, because this whole thing has been about keeping emotions in check, and that's what's important. And the team really come together. Actually, one shot I should mention, which I didn't mention, which is when we move away from like this location and the shootout and the aftermath, is there's a nice shot of when Holly and obviously Ralph are left behind that the camera just slowly drifts backwards, just slowly drifts away, and you just see like the cars and the bodies, and just drifts away slowly. It's a really powerful sort of shot, and that's kind of it really. Everything's tied up. Their story sort of covers it. They've eliminated El Coco, but they've also pinned it on Jack, who is now dead anyway. So pretty impressive final episode, and they do this cool little thing. Well, I should mention, sorry, Holly and Ralph, because they finally have bonded, and Ralph even says to her, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind working with you again." And we get some more thematic stuff because I think he asks Holly about what El Coco was asking her. And Holly says, well, it was asking me how I was certain than why I believed in it. So I was so determined to believe in this thing. And she just says, it takes an outsider to know an outsider, if you see what I mean. And that's just basic kind of mythology and like philosophy behind this thing. Then yeah, it is often an outcast, someone a bit unusual on the fringes of society, who is more likely to believe in like spooky things. So whatever, it's quite nicely done. And I think when you see like the kind of mid-credit scene, if you like, they do some interesting stuff with Holly in this. So the way this scene ends with Jack is that sorry, not Jack. Similar character names. It's easy to get muddled up with Ralph. He just asks, so what other truths are out there? So this is really interesting because Ralph is a believer now, and he's brought. Obviously, he's seen the evidence anyway, but he also believes that Holly can unlock other like mysteries of this nature. And I wonder if I've heard there's other novels with Holly, so I'm not sure if this came before or after them, but. And she just smiles and walks out, and it's like she's in complete control. She plays it cool, but this sort of shows another side to Holly. And I'll talk about the mid-credit scene, the mid-title scenes, but first I'll just talk about like a nice little scene with Ralph and Jenny, Jeannie, I should say. Like before that, where they're just at the graveside of like the original child who was killed, and Ralph tells her about when he saw Derek, their late son, like as a spirit, not actually him, but as a spirit, and tells him that he just told me to move on. And it seems to become clear that then Ralph has never been able to bring himself to visit his graveside, because that's something Jeannie says, where she says maybe in years to come you'll be able to visit him. But it's a cathartic moment, and they're obviously at the grave of like these victims, so. Yeah, not nice little way, but they do fool us because it starts the title sequence, and then it cuts in, and there's a little bit halfway through, and it's Holly again, and I wondered if there would be some sort of sting in the tail, and there is sort of. She's like in the bathroom in front of the mirror, and she suddenly sees something in the mirror, so behind her, and she freaks, and it's a quick little shot. Now, I didn't make out what it was supposed to be, or if it was supposed to be I mean, if you're going on the El Coco theory, it might have been another Holly, but if anyone saw who it was, or if it was anyone familiar, then let me know in the comments. But Holly immediately, as soon as it's gone, she just checks her neck for a mark, and there's no mark, so that's kind of like a fake out. But then the next bit is that we see her on the internet, and she's and I wasn't quite sure if this was in the past or the present, but she's looking at Terry, like the case online and the details. But the other little touch is that she's tuned into like this radio station or something, and it's just like giving like facts about like these hit records, and that's obviously been her whole ability. So the end scene, I think, is meant to call into question if Holly is legit, if she ever really had these kind of special abilities and powers, and if she just knew this stuff, or if she just does research and gets it all. I mean, I guess if you absorb, because obviously she had this, like the talent to just name all these like details about these records over so many years, but I guess if you absorb information and remember it, there's sort of no trick to that. There's nothing like unsincere about that, because you have to remember it originally. You have to hear it somewhere originally. But I guess if it's saying that then she just used all this stuff to convince people that she had this like uncanny ability, then it makes a little bit of a phony, if you like. And we see her reading up on the Terry case. Earlier she said, "Who's Terry?" So that brings that into question. So it's just a little bit, which I kind of like. It doesn't really change anything, but it's just a little bit which is meant to make you think about, first of all, is El Coco still around? But most importantly, is Holly legit? Is she really what she says she is? And it doesn't matter too much if she's not, because she obviously helped them. She helped to solve the case and was an important force behind that. But it's just this ironic little thing than if she just relied on research rather than actually thinking outside the box and like these methods. Did she really do stuff that they couldn't? But she obviously did it, they didn't. But it's just this little thing to call into question at the end. It's probably not needed in a way. I think if I'm going to nitpick at that, I don't know if just playing with that idea of is she legit, does it really add that much? Is it like a big revelation, even if you think she is a bit of a con artist? I think another side to it is then you could sort of say then she wants human connection. She wants to feel important. She wants to be involved in stuff. So that's maybe why she does it. So there's something very human about that. But as I said, just a little scene at the end. And that's it. It ties itself up quite nicely, apart from that kind of open-ended thing with Holly. I kind of expected there to be some sort of hint that now Coco might still be out there, or then its effects is, but we didn't get that. It's pretty much done and dusted, and I thought it was an effective finale overall. As I said, there has been issues with the series. I think 10 episodes was too many. I think it could have been shortened. I think 8 could have been a good number. I just think it's one of those things where maybe they've stuck too close to the novel, and they just felt yeah, we have to include most of the big stuff, and maybe that's me not read the novel, but I guess when it's as many as 10 episodes, you and there was a fair bit of padding, so you maybe get that impression then they included so much from the novel, but whatever. It's been good. I've liked the suspense of it. I've liked the direction. The cast have been really, really good. Holly's been like one of my favourite new characters on TV, and the the character moments I've enjoyed, and there has been a fair bit to discuss in most of the episodes. It's been very intriguing and quite meaty, even when there's not been a lot going on in the plot. So overall, it's a thumbs up for me. Maybe not quite the show it could have been, but still a good show. I've been pretty satisfied with it, and I wouldn't have any problems rewatching it. So there you have it. That's the finale to The Outsider. If you've seen the episode, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and look out for new television reviews. And just to highlight, I do put regular shows that I do in a playlist, so I will add this final episode to the Outsider playlist, so all 10 episodes will be in a playlist for you guys to view if you're new to the show, if you haven't watched the series yet, and you can watch all my reviews alongside watching the actual show. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.